Alright guys, so we're going to get into something here that I think is one of the most confusing parts of JavaScript for beginners, and that's prototypes. Now, I came from a PHP background, and even though it's not the most popular or cleanest language, it does use class-based objects, just like Java or C# and all those other popular languages. ES5 JavaScript, however, does not. So coming from a language that uses classes to doing things the way that ES5 does was very confusing. So I'm going to try and explain things in a simple way and not flood you with unnecessary information. Now, each object in JavaScript has a prototype, and a prototype is an object itself. All objects inherit their properties and methods from their prototype. Now, when you're dealing with object literals, then you're inheriting from a prototype called object.prototype. Alright, so I'm just going to put that in here. So object.prototype. And when you're dealing with objects that were created through a constructor, like for instance the person constructor that we created, it's going to come from person.prototype. Okay, now there's something called the prototype chain where you have this prototype, but then you can go up to the main object.prototype. And I'm going to give you an example of what that looks like within the console. All right, so what I want to do is I want to put back the person constructor that we had from, I think it was 5.2. So let's go ahead and paste that in. I don't want to retype it because we've already done this. The one difference here is that we have a first name and a last name instead of just name. Okay, so make sure that you set this dot first name and then this dot last name. We also have the birthday, which takes in, we have a string that comes in and then we run it through the date constructor. And then we have the calculate age, which is a function that's attached to the person object. All right, so we can go ahead and instantiate a new person by just saying, let's say const John equals, and we'll say new person. Now remember, it takes in a first name, last name, birthday. So we'll say, I don't know, 8. We'll say 8/12/90. Okay, so that's one. Let's create another person. We'll say Mary equals new person. That should be capital. Person, first name Mary, last name Johnson, and then a birthday. And this can be in any format. We could even do like, we could say March 20th, 1978. All right, so if we go and we console.log, let's console log Mary and save, and you can see we have a person object here with the birthday, which is in the form of a date. We have the first name and last name, and we have the calculate age function. Now, also attached to this is a prototype. Now, the prototype is not something that we could access, like let's say in a for in loop if we were to loop through a property. But the browser gives us this pseudo property, or this pointer called double_proto_. And if we look in here, what this represents is this person.prototype. Okay, so anything we put inside of the person prototype will show up in here. Now notice we have another proto right here, another pseudo property. This represents object.prototype, which is kind of the top of the chain, and this has its own properties and methods, such as has own property, which will this will return a boolean indicating if a specified property is inside of that object, and I'll show you how to use that in a little bit. But what I want to do now is take a look at our person constructor, and it's clear that each person has to have their own first name, last name, and birthday. So those should be actual properties of this object. Now, calculate age, however, is going to be the same for every person. Okay, there's no difference in Mary or John's calculate age function. It's the same thing. It's going to look at their birthday and it's going to return their age. So this is something that we should put inside of the prototype, not directly into the object. So the way that we would do that is, let's go down here, let's say calculate age, and I'm going to say person dot prototype dot calculate age, and I'm going to set it equal to this function. Okay, so I'm just going to grab this, I'm going to copy this and paste that right in there like that. And then I'm just going to comment this out. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that, and now let's look in the console. So notice that now we have first name, last name, birthday. Calculate age is no longer there. Now let's take a look at the person.prototype, and look at that, calculate age. Alright, so we've now moved it into the prototype. Now we can use this just as we would before. So if we go down here and we say, let's go under Mary, and let's do console.log, and let's take John, and let's say dot calculate age, and save, and we get 27. So it works just as if it were actually inside of this constructor, okay, actually part of the object. Alright, so let's create another prototype method. So let's do one, let's say get full name. So we'll say person dot prototype dot get full name. We want to set that equal to a function, and let's just return. We'll use a template literal, so we'll use some backticks, and we can simply say this dot first name, we'll put a space, and then we'll say this dot last name. Alright, so then we'll go down here, and let's say console.log, and let's say Mary dot get full name, and save, and we get Mary Johnson. If we look inside here, inside this proto object, we now have calculate age and get full name. So we're not flooding our constructor with these functions, we're putting them inside of the prototype. Now up to this point, our prototype methods are just basically getting data for us. We can also manipulate the data. So what I want to do now is create one for gets married. Alright, so let's say that Mary gets married. Her last name is most likely going to change. So let's say person dot prototype dot gets married, and we're going to set that to a function. And then all we're going to do here, this is actually going to take in an argument or a parameter, and we're going to say new last name. And then we're going to set this dot last name equals new last name. Alright, so now we'll go down here. Now we can see we're getting her full name, which is Mary Johnson. But let's go ahead and run Mary dot gets married. And we'll put in here Smith. And then let's run again get full name. And you can see we get Mary Johnson, we run the gets married method, and then we get Mary Smith. Alright, so you can see how powerful that is. And these are not stored in the object. Again, if we look in the prototype, we have all three of those methods. Now, like I said, we also have access to object.prototype, which is this right here. So let's take a look at has own property. So what that'll do is it'll look at your object and it'll check for properties that it has. In our case, we have first name, last name, and birthday. So there's no special syntax we need to use to access these methods. We can simply say Mary dot has own property, and we'll pass in first name and save, and we get true. Okay, so we didn't have to do any kind of dot object dot prototype or whatever. We can just simply use has own property. Now if we were to put something in here that's not there, actually, you know what I'll do is I'll put in get full name. Okay, even though we can use that, it's not part of the actual, it's not an actual property. So if we were to run that, we're going to get false because this is in the prototype. It's not part of its own property. Okay, so I hope that this cleared up prototypes a little bit and how they're used. So that's it, and I will see you in the next video.